Hello everybody, it's Niko House here, and I'm making a video to talk to you all today about what we have seen coming into fruition over the last 2 days and how it has justified all of the outrage over the last 2 weeks. So, as most of you know, as Colin Kaepernick decided to take a knee during the national anthem, protesting a song foundationalizing racism and imperialism, the world, not all of the world, but the conservative majority, literally sent death threats or protested his protest, or would even say things like, "We just believed there was a better way to do so." And the majority of those people constantly talk about how Colin Kaepernick, either one, should shut up and play football, or two, is not justified in his protest, although the First Amendment does give him that right. But they say he's not justified in his protest because injustices in America are not as potent as Colin Kaepernick tends to claim. They say he doesn't understand racial injustice simply because he was adopted by a white family, which is a little ironic considering that many people say that being white gives you no inherent advantage over being black, but that's a different discussion for another day. But they also say that he shouldn't speak out because those issues aren't as prevalent as all the statistics and, all the people who have been killed this year, which I believe at this point around 160 minorities have been killed by police officers this year. They say that those numbers don't matter. Yet, in Charlotte, North Carolina, we had a man killed while reading a book, waiting for his child at the bus stop. And then in Tulsa, Oklahoma, we have another man killed for having his car broken down in the middle of the road, and then they shoot him, she shot him, saying that she felt threatened. And the helicopter actually identified him as looking potentially dangerous. Now, mind you, ladies and gentlemen, this is in the same week where someone planted a bomb in New York City and was apprehended alive. He literally aimed to kill people and actually entered a gunfight with police officers. And they managed to take him alive. But a pastor who was on the side of a road with his hands up was a threat. And a man who was reading a book in his car was also a threat. Now, of course, we saw the outrage from the usual people, like myself, because we see this over and over and over again. This isn't new to us. Unfortunately, it's almost to the point where we're becoming desensitized to it, and we have to joke about it to laugh it off. But in actuality, it's very saddening, and it's actually pretty scary. But what actually didn't really surprise me, but what actually did surprise me to a slight extent, was the deafening silence of all of those who just last week claimed that this is America, home of the free, land of the brave. You want to go to North Korea or the Middle East and see how they live, and see if you still want to protest the national anthem. That were nowhere to be found over the last 2 days. Over the last 2 days, we have not heard one single word from them. A man was shot while waiting for his kid in his vehicle while reading a book, and the other was shot while waiting beside his vehicle. Both black men. Both said that they were seen as threatening, and neither of them gave anyone a reason to feel threatened. How can we continue to deny that there is a problem in this country? How? At this point, to pretend it all that there is not a problem with fallible human beings with 19 weeks of police officer training being authoritatively put in charge of other fallible human beings in saying that you can be the determining factor of life and death by giving these fallible human beings with only 19 weeks of training a gun. I don't know how we thought that that wouldn't be a problem to begin with. Ladies and gentlemen, how do we keep pretending to be this ignorant? My mom is 47 years old, and if she was born in the South, she would have had to have been put in a separate area of the hospital of the white children. Do you realize that was one generation ago? Do you realize that there were many racist people in the South, or else segregation wouldn't have been able to exist, or else Jim Crow laws would not have been able to exist? So how do we expect that racism simply disappears because of a law that was passed to repeal segregation in Jim Crow, and because some years passed? So those police officers who were literally put in charge, and they did so knowing that this was wrong, I am absolutely sure of it. They were put in charge of making sure that blacks didn't sit in the same areas as whites. They didn't drink from the same water fountains as whites. They didn't go to the same school as whites. Those police officers had kids. Those racist teachers who taught in segregated schools had children. Those politicians who advocated, whose kids are now also very powerful because of their generational political status, had kids. Those kids are now our doctors, our lawyers, our police officers, our judge, our jury, our executioners, our teachers. And we pretend that racism just disappeared. We pretend that blacks should not feel a little uneasy when walking around cops, when in Massachusetts, just this week, the Massachusetts Supreme Court said blacks at one point were not allowed to run from police officers. But according to the statistics, they should be running because they should be scared. And now, if you are African American and you decide to run away, you will no longer get in trouble in Massachusetts. Because the statistics are so telling that you can't simply pretend as if there's no correlation, if not causation. So we have to stop pretending that intersectionality is non-existent. Remember, the legalization of LGBTQ marriages of all kinds was just passed a couple of years ago and just reaffirmed by the Supreme Court. Less than that. So when that happened, did homophobia all of a sudden disappear? Ladies and gentlemen, a LGBTQ club was just shot up in Orlando. But gay marriage is legal. Barack Obama's the president. Muslims become congressmen. How can racism exist? Ladies and gentlemen, racism will always exist until we have real conversations about these real issues, and we force people to become educated by those who don't only experience these issues, but by those who can look from the outside, who are white males, white females, and see how they are treated differently than their black or Latino or other people of color, the counterparts of their, people of color. We need to have this conversation soon before it's too late.